Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. And in this particular video, I'm going to talk about VPC endpoint concept. This is the mostly used concept, and when you are encountering through your DevOps interview, or you might be working with your real project, you might have utilized this VPC endpoint. Or if you are the beginner, you will be utilizing this VPC endpoint concept going forward. Correct? So we will talk in detail about this. We will do the hands-on demo as well on this VPC endpoint concept, and we will see the use case of the VPC endpoint as well. Before getting into the demo, let's understand from the theoretical part, and let's understand that picture what is on the screen. Correct. So on this screen, we do have this VPC endpoint, you can see, and there is one AWS region. Within this region block, we have one VPC, and within this VPC, there is two subnet, public subnet and private subnet. This public subnet has one internet gateway connectivity, and there is one AWS S3 service and DynamoDB table. In this particular demo, we are going to establish the communication between your private EC2 to AWS S3. So we will see how your EC2 instance can communicate to AWS S3 using private communications, using VPC endpoint, correct? But before that VPC endpoint, we will also understand how it can communicate to your AWS S3 without VPC endpoint. This one also we will explore. Correct. So that is the overall picture. Like we will be creating one public subnet, we will be creating one private subnet, we will be creating one public EC2 instance, and then we will create one private EC2 instance, and from there we will try to establish the communication to our AWS S3. So this one we are going to understand, correct? Because your public EC2 instance can anyway connect to the AWS S3 because there is internet gateway connectivity. But the moment when it will come for the private EC2 instance, it can communicate to AWS S3 using the NAT gateway and then internet gateway finally. Correct. But if you do not have to utilize this internet gateway, if you do not have to utilize this NAT gateway, then how will you establish the communication? That is this yellow communication, correct? Yellow bridge, which is established from you with the help of VPC endpoint. So this one we are going to understand in this particular video. So let's cover some of the theoretical points here. VPC endpoint, how can we configure between the resources between your EC2 instance to AWS S3? We can configure in this way. Let's directly move towards the demo part and we will understand the process, correct? So I'm going to our VPC dashboard, and on this VPC dashboard I will be just clicking on create VPC. So first of all we are going to create one VPC here, and this VPC I'm just going to name it test-VPC, correct? Or endpoint-VPC. I'm just going to name it endpoint-VPC. Endpoint-VPC. And then the CIDR what we will pass, that will be called as 10.0.0/16, correct? I hope we are recording. Yes, 10.00/16. Then I'll just clicking on the create VPC. Your VPC has been created. So according to the diagram, the first block you have achieved VPC creation. Now we'll create public subnet and route tables, all these things. So within this VPC, I'll be now creating two subnet. That one we will call as private and public subnet. Okay. So endpoint VPC we have selected, and here I'm just going to name it as public-subnet, and then availability zone I will select episode 1A. The CIDR what I will select, that is 10.0.1.0/24. Okay, 256 number of evidence. I will also create one more subnet here, and this subnet we are going to name it as a private-subnet, and for this we are going to select availability zone as episode 1A, and for this CIDR I will pass as 10.0.2.0/24. Let's click on the create subnet, and your two subnets are created, private subnet and public subnet. Now click on the two route table creation as well. So we will just refresh here, and I will be creating two route table here. The first route table we are going to name it as public route, and we will select the VPC, endpoint VPC. In the similar way, we will create one more route table here, and that route table we will name it as a private route. And why we are configuring the name in this way? Because we are going to utilize all these things. So we are going to utilize your private EC2 instance, public EC2 instance, and we will see how internet gateway can help you to establish the communication with your AWS S3. and how your private server can communicate, correct? So this is what we are going to explore. So we will click on the create route table and your route tables are created. In the subnet association, I will click on the private subnet. Why I have selected this private subnet as association? Because we are in the private route table, correct? So I have selected the private subnet. Now we will go to the route table which is marked as private, sorry, public one, correct? So in the public route, we will configure the public subnet what we have created, correct? Public subnet we will be creating, sorry, we do have, and we have associated it. Now to make this route table as public, what we will have to do? We will have to create one internet gateway. So let me go to the internet gateway. We will click on the create internet gateway, and here I am going to pass endpoint hyphen IGW. We will click on the create IGW and your IGW has been created. Now click on the attach to a VPC, and here you can establish the communication between your internet gateway, like from the outside to the VPC. Here you can see in the diagram there is internet gateway which is establishing the communication from internet to your VPC. So in the similar way we will be selecting this. We will establish the internet gateway to this VPC, correct? So that is also done. In route table, the public route table, now we will configure our internet gateway. So here we will click on the edit routes and we will click on the add route and we will pass on the 00, and from here we will select the internet gateway, the one what we have just created, endpoint IGW. Save changes. So till now, what you have done, you have created VPC, you have created two subnets, you have created two route tables, you have created internet gateway, and the way this with the help of this, you are now able to establish the communication from your EC2, correct? So EC2 we will create, and then we will see how can we communicate with our AWS S3. So let me move towards the EC2 console here now. Sorry, EC2 console. Now on the EC2, we will create one EC2 instance, which is called as public EC2 instance first. Let me refresh. Okay, these are terminated ones. So I'll be just clicking on public EC2 instance, correct? Public hyphen EC2. So I've just selected this public EC2 instance, and then I'll be creating this server. And for this, I'm just going to select the key pair, which is called as Manish-demo, correct? Then in the edit, I'm just going to select the VPC, what we have just created, and this VPC will be called as endpoint-VPC, correct? The private subnet, and out of the public subnet, I'll be selecting this public subnet. I will select the security group. Sorry, I will be just creating one security group here, and this security group will be named as, let me just keep it on mute for 1 second. So we will just pass one security group here, and this security group will be called as public-SG. This security group will be having this access of doing the SSH, right? So we will just allow the SSH communication. We will also allow the TCP request, which we will be having the port 8080, and we will also add security group rules. This one you can add based on your requirements. So we will just establish the communication with the help of protocol HTTP as well. In the CIDR, I'm just going to select as a source 00. Correct. So that will allow the communication. And here, yes, I have selected this enable public IP address as well. So that means the server what you are going to launch, that server will be having one public IP address associated with this one. Okay. So this way we will create our one AWS EC2 instance, the public EC2 instance, and from this EC2 instance we will be able to do our AWS S3 LS command execution. Correct. So now let's connect this AWS S3 AWS EC2 instance, and meanwhile this EC2 instance is being launched. Let me create one more EC2 instance that we will call as private EC2 instance. So I will just pass the name here, private-EC2. Then the operating system we will select, and after the operating system we will select the T2.micro, the key pair. I'm going to select the same one, Manish-demo. because just for the demo purpose, we are utilizing the same key pair. You can have the different one as well, but just for our convenience, so that I can have the copy and paste those kind of things. With yeah, like with the easy process, I'm just keeping the same key pair there. I will select the VPC here, endpoint hyphen VPC, the one what we have created, and the subnet. Right now, I'm going to create private EC2 instance, so I'll be selecting this private subnet. And here the auto assign public IP will be disabled. The security group, the one what we have just selected, so I will just selecting this public SJ. This is the same security group. Then click on the launch instance, and your EC2 instance will be created. Now we will try to establish the communication from here, and we will launch our public. Sorry, we will start from our running instances. So let me connect this public EC2 instance, and we will click on the connect. The moment you click on the connect, you can have this EC2 instance over here, like the EC2 instance which is running and which is up. So from this EC2 instance, we can perform any kind of operation over AWS S3. So what I will do, I will just run simple AWS S3 ls command. Now you can see the error unable to locate credential. What does this error mean? This error means that you do not have permission to operate anything over AWS S3 ls, correct? Like over your AWS S3 bucket. So how will we give the permission to this server to work with your AWS S3, like the S3 service itself? We will assign one IAM role to this server. So let me get back to this EC2 instance and the EC2 instance which are running, correct? So to this public EC2 instance, what I will do, I will get into the actions, I will get into the security, and I will have the option to modify IAM role. In the modify IAM role, I will just select this demo role. I will click on the update IAM role. And now your server has the permission to do AWS S3 ls. You can see there are two buckets which has been listed down now. You can verify it from console as well. Let me open up the AWS S3. Okay. Here you can see there are two buckets on the console, and these two buckets has been listed down with the help of AWS S3 ls command. Now what I have to do, we have to establish the communication from your private EC2 to the AWS S3 bucket, correct? So what I will do, I will just now try to configure this private EC2 communication. To establish the communication, like to log in into private EC2, what we will have to do, we will have to go from public EC2 to this private EC2, correct? So what I will do, I will just create one file here, and this file we will call it as vi, and the key pair name, right now if you see there is no key pair, correct? So we will not be able to do the SSH. So if I have to establish the communication from public server to private server, I will have to keep the key pair, and the key pair what we have utilized well at the time of launching our private EC2 instance, correct? So the time of at the time of private EC2 instance launch, you have selected this Manish demo key pair, correct? So you will have to pass on that key pair over here. So what I will do, I will just click on the Manish-demo.pam, and in short mode we will have to get into that. I will just copy the content of that key pair. This is the key pair content. I already had opened this. So we will just select and we will just paste it over here. Paste, correct? Then skip and then save it. You are done. If you do LSLRTS over here, you will see that there is a read write permission for this file. So we will have to change it from read write to only read permission for the user. chmod 400 and then manish-demo.pam. So your file is now with the permission read only, correct? You can see the difference between the permission over here and the permission over here, after the command execution. Now we will try to SSH into our private server. SSH-I, then your key pair name, manish-demo.pam, then ec2-user at the rate private IP address of your server, of your private EC2 instance. This is how you can establish or you can log in into your private server with the help of this way, correct? SSH-I, the key pair. The key pair you will have to keep it on the server from where you want to log in, the public server, then EC2 user, and then IP address of that private server. The moment you try to establish the communication, the login, you have been logged in into your private server, correct? 10.0.2.233. This is the private server IP address, correct? The private IP address. Now, if you try to do AWS S3 ls command from this, will you be able to do this? You won't be. You got the error, unable to look at credentials. So once again, you will have to attach the IAM role to this server as well, the private server, correct? So we will get into private EC2, you will get into security, you will get into modify IAM role, and from here you will be modifying your IAM role, correct? So you will select this demo role and you will update IAM role. What is the permission associated with this IAM role, the demo IAM role? Let me show you that too. So this demo role has the permission to operate any kind of operation over your AWS S3 bucket. This is the demo role what we are attaching to our EC2 instance, correct? This is the demo role, the ARN what we selected, and it has the permission to operate anything over your AWS S3, correct? S3 full access. Those kind of permission we do have. So now your AWS private server is also having this IAM role associated. Let me refresh here, and you can see there is IAM role which is configured, demo role, correct? And this demo role has the permission to operate over AWS S3. Now, when we will do AWS S3 ls over once again over here, you can see it is not resulting into any error, unable to look at credential. That error is not coming. But at this time, it is not able to list down the buckets as well. So what is the meaning of this particular process which is happening right now? It has the permission to get into AWS S3, but there is no connection established between your EC2 instance to AWS S3. So how will you? And this is the private server, correct? This is not the public server. The moment it was public server, we did AWS S3 ls and we were able to see the AWS S3 bucket, correct? You can see here on the top. The moment we did AWS S3 ls command and we were able to see the bucket name here, correct? Because this was public server. The moment when you logged into your private server, you are not able to see. How can you do? You can create your NAT gateway and then your NAT gateway can establish the communication with internet gateway, that you can do. But if you have to establish the private and secure communication without internet, you can utilize this VPC endpoint concept. So now we will be creating one endpoint here. Let me go back to the dashboard of the VPC. We will click on the endpoints, and in the endpoint, I will be just clicking on the create endpoint. Here I will just pass the EC2 to S3 endpoint. That's the name I'm going to pass. Here in the services, I will just select the S3 and S3 episode 1.S3. The type of the endpoint I will select as a gateway to establish the communication. You can utilize interface as well, but mostly we utilize the interface for Lambda function API gateway. For your EC2 to S3, you can select this gateway as an endpoint. I will select the VPC, endpoint VPC, the VPC where we are working. Route table, I will be selecting the private route because our private EC2 instance is quite part of private subnet, correct? This one, and this private subnet is configured in private route table. So we will select the private route table here and we will click on the create endpoint. The moment you have done all these things, your route table has been configured. The private route table has been configured with this endpoint entry here. So let me refresh. And you can see there is a one entry made in your route table PLCMNet, correct? This is the peering connection ID. Now, if you do AWS S3 ls, correct? It already worked, correct? If you do AWS S3 ls here, you can see there are two buckets which are already existing. If you want to create any bucket from here, right now on the console, you can see there are only two buckets, correct? If you refresh. If you want to create any other bucket, what you can do, AWS S3 MB exists for make bucket, correct? And then the bucket name. So bucket name, I'm just going to pass Manish-demo-19, any random name. And one bucket will be created, correct? Now do AWS S3 ls and you can see there are three buckets, correct? Let's go to the console here as well and refresh, and you can see there are three buckets now. So this way you can establish the communication from your EC2 instance to your AWS S3, correct? And you can understand this from the diagram. You can establish the private EC2 to AWS S3 communication with the help of VPC endpoint and the type of the gateway. So it helps you to establish the private communication between your server to AWS services, and it also helps you to reduce the cost of the infrastructure, correct? Because NAT gateway and internet gateway is not being utilized, and VPC endpoint is kind of free for you, correct? So you can utilize this gateway. There's a very less cost associated with this. So with the help of VPC endpoint, this way you can establish the communication. So in this particular video, we just wanted to cover this much only, the VPC endpoint concept and the demo. And let's meet in the next video with some new concept of the AWS or any other technology like your Kubernetes or the Terraform. So till the time, thank you. Bye bye.